actually appears in Sukkah as well. For those who learned the Daf Yomi, I did not long ago. The Gemara talks about that when David was striking the foundations for the Beis HaMikdash, so he dug deep into the waters of the Tahom, right? And what happened? The waters started to rise, and there was a flooding that apparently was about to engulf large swaths, if not the whole world, certainly Eretz Yisrael. And so David wanted to put a stop to it. So he thought, how can I stop the water? What I can do is write Shem Hashem on a piece of pottery and cast it into the waters, and the waters will calm down, subside, and the world will be saved. So he starts wondering aloud, you're allowed to do it. You know, he's the first brisker. You know, he starts clearing a chakira. Can I can't, and then he's hemming and he's hawing. And suddenly the big Talmud Chacham, his Rebbe, Achitophel comes and he says, no problem, it's a Kal V'chomer. What's the Kal V'chomer? The law of Sota, the woman who sequestered herself against her husband's wishes, and there's now a suspicion of adultery. So what did they do, amongst other things? Into the water went the name of God that was written on the parchment. The waters caused the erasure of God's name. But Chazal tell us that's how far you go. It's a big lesson for contemporary Jewish world. How far you have to go to make shalom. You erase the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what? Shalom between who? One man and one woman, says Achitophel. The world's about to be engulfed with flooding waters that are going to rage and rampage. You don't think you can erase the name of God in order to save not just the shalom of one couple, but of many couples and many communities? Yeah.
Are you saying that the Kedusha of God's name is only in the Hebrew language?
I actually didn't address it yet. That's a good question.
Before you said it was only with the Hebrew language.
It's a good question. I will go so far right now to say to you, I really wasn't going to address the language thing so much. I want to get to recycling. But I'll say this. Many people, including myself, but I admit it's only because of habit, not because I think it's really required. When they write the name of God in English, what do they do? Okay. And that means it's okay. Because if you wrote G-O-D, that's not okay. Now, in the Gemara, I checked all the editions, even Art Scroll.
G-O-D doesn't appear.
G-O-D doesn't appear. There's Yud K Vav K, there's Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, there's Aleph Lamed. But G-O-D wasn't there, not even in the Art Scroll. Elamah, why would God, G-O-D, be a problem? Because conceptually, that word is reflecting, let's get holy, the Eibishter. And if you write G-D, who are you talking about?
Same thing.
Your pet dog, the same thing. So what does G-D accomplish other than it does accomplish something? It's a reminder to me, I got to be very careful how I relate to the Shem Hashem. But from a halachic technical thing, no difference.
Chaim says that in other languages it's okay to write the full name because only Yud K Vav K in other languages is Asr, and G-O-D and all the names we have don't refer to the Yud K Vav K name.
Right, because there are many names of God in Hebrew: Rachum, Chanun, Erech Hapayim, Makom. Right. But they're not from the seven Shemot. Now, so the Avnei Nezer says the following. So David was assuaged, and fine, you can put the name of Hashem in the water, even though it'll be erased. Why could you do it? Only because Achitophel came up with a valid Kal V'chomer. But Stam, if you didn't have that Kal V'chomer, would you be allowed to take God's name that's on a piece of parchment and just dump it into the bathtub? Into a container, a vessel of water? No, it's only because it was a Kal V'chomer for Hashra'at HaShalom that it was allowed. But otherwise, it wouldn't be allowed. Why wouldn't it be allowed? What are you doing? You're not sitting there obliterating. You're not burning it. You put it in water. When you put it in water, the name of God was intact. Did it immediately upon hitting the surface of the water disintegrate? No, it's there. With passage of time, it will disintegrate. That's called classic grammar. And yet it would have been prohibited were it not for the Kal V'chomer reasoning that Achitophel employed.
But there's a slight difference because the pasuk there says mochaka, or mochek. There's a physical act of erasure involved with Megillah Sota, which is not just dropping it in the water.
You're actually enhancing the question because in the case of throwing it into the water, you're not doing the erasure, and it still would have been a problem, except for Achitophel's deductive reasoning. Therefore, says the Avnei Nezer, what are you telling me that to indirectly grumma erase the name of God is okay? It's not okay, based on
if the name have a different meaning, למשל צבאות, כתוב צבאות ערב. Nothing to do with Hashem's
That's
name.
a very interesting question that comes up. For example, my cousin Danny. His name is Daniel. Now, how do you spell Daniel? Dalid Nun Yud Aleph Lamed. Or there's another way you can spell it: Dalid Nun Yud Aleph and the 23rd letter hyphen Lamed.
Insisted on calling him Daniel.
That's-
I told him it's crazy.
It
And
is.
then we went to Reb Aaron. And
Which
he gave
Rav
us-
Aaron? Kotler?
Yeah, and he took a day, instead of saying it's crazy like I did, to write a shut about it.
And the shut said it's crazy.
There's an
Yeah.
there's an issue of limud,
Right.
of kavod Hashem, and there's also an issue of having a kavana for the act that is muted.
Of course. And when you say Daniel, even though it has significance that could be related to the name of Hashem, right? But that's not the intent. You're intending to say Danny, not
But very few
Kel.
people live in Beit Kel say.
And Beit, okay, so Beit El, there's at least a small sliver of a Havamim. Because in the case of, let's say, Danny's, and there are many, many such, Yerachmiel, I can go on and on.
Changing my name.
Yeah. But that's a little bit different, as at least it's not pronounced that the same way. Daniel is pronounced.
Hear me out.
Right.
You convinced me.
There are tons of
I'm
these
changing my
names.
name. My name is now Easy.
Is he? Okay, that's good.
It was a minute Yisrael to use the Shem Hashem.
Right. So Beit El is perhaps slightly different because unlike all these other names where the shame of Hashem is but part of a broader word or name, in the case of Beit El, you have a separate word. But even there, it is clear that you can say Beit El. I honestly, I don't know anyone who walks around and says, I'm going to Beit Kel for Shabbat.
It sounds like a beer.
Yeah, but here. Okay, so similar to the question of the Avnei Nezer, the Nodi Yehuda, his son actually, and successor of Shmuel, who lived before the Avnei Nezer by almost a century, he was presented with the following question. Those of you who've been to Poland know that in Europe's shuls, they used to adorn the shul with many, many psukim. And sometimes they could even have Shem Hashem. And if it needed repair, so you're allowed to, or you want to rebuild, and so forth and so on. So he was asked this question, and he said that mechika through grama of Shem Hashem is not a problem only when it follows the case that we saw in the Gemara. What was the case in the Gemara? A tefillah shel mitzvah. Not stam a guy wants to go to the Y for a swim, to the matnas for a dip in the pool. He had a tefillah shel mitzvah. But says the son of the Nodi Yehuda, if it's not a tefillah shel mitzvah, then you can't, even with grammar, you can't just willy-nilly erase the name of Hashem. And he's buttressed by the fact, as he points out, if you could do grama, how come the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch don't mention it? They don't discuss that you can do grama, erasure of God's name. Or how about the Gemara in Masechet Megillah that everybody's aware, when a Sefer Torah is worn out, what are you supposed to do? You have to bury it, and you bury it preferably next to a Talmud Chacham, and you have to put it in an earthenware vessel. You can't just bury it. Why do you have to put it in an earthenware vessel? To preserve it. We need to preserve it. Because if you put it in the ground and there will be near immediate erasure, it's still grama. It's still grama, but we see it's a problem. So you got to do what you can do to avoid it. So he says we see that grama is not something that's sanctioned unless you have no choice in a mitzvah situation, which is why you do bury the sefer. If you think putting it in an earthenware vessel is going to protect it, till kingdom come, pardon the expression, that's not going to happen.